Super nice.
Now, he just likes having it.
Jenny, were you saying this was written a year ago?
No. We received all of this with the April planning commission packet.
Okay.
And we decided at that point to put it table it because we were doing the more issue. And we were all tired from the last year.
Right.
The height of the paper. Isn't that lovely?
I know, right.
Last year. But see, then I pull out things and I go, hey Chad, what happened to this? Which you just love. Okay, are you ready to go? Is Chad ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. It's 6 o'clock and I called to order the Deer Heart Planning Commission on July 13th, 2023. We have a consent agenda. We have the minutes from April 20th and May 11th, the financial report, and there is no correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Russ is moved. Do I have a second? Terry has seconded. All those in favor say aye. And all the people that were here. Well, no, well, this someone's voted on so. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay.
I'll stay just because I wasn't at the April meeting.
Yeah, but you were here. I was at the May meeting. I'm just here. Yes. Okay, report, staff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's our time to be here today, or see.
He's not, I think he's on the phone.
Okay. Garrett, are you online by chance?
He said he was coming.
Okay, well, we'll see how that works out. I think it might be on there on the phone, the 303 number. All right, so not much to report, other than I just want to follow up. 4th of July was pretty.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Hi, how you doing? All right.
Okay.
Hi,
I'm just
everybody.
I'm just doing it up. Oh, Sharon's there.
That's Sharon. That's not the.
Yeah, we were looking for Garrett, but it's good to know that Sharon's there.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, 303. All right, bye.
Slow this down a little bit. So 4th of July went pretty well. We did have a lot fewer complaints than we have in the years prior. There still was fireworks, there still were people driving too fast, there still were beach messes, but we had a really big group of volunteers that really cleaned that beach up quickly. And we've done some discussions with the city after this and ways to improve and garbage cans and things like that. So we're going to be kind of looking at some of those and trying to figure out how to do it a little bit better, but we were very pleased. The fire department did pretty well. They had about 30 calls that night. Most of them were public assist, a few medical, a few little tiny fires that we put out, but all in all, people stayed pretty safe. The street dance that went before was the largest street dance that they ever that they have. It looks like there's about 450 people there.
Great.
And they had a great time. I could hear them singing all the way down from here. But yeah, it was pretty busy for the staff, but I think it pulled off pretty well. Currently, we're working on water rates. You might see that in the news. Between the city of Warrenton and the city of Gerhart, which is trying to figure things out, agreements. City of Warrenton's rates are going up, just like everybody else are. The city of Gerhart is looking at a rate increase. So far, they've instructed us to put an ordinance together to go for about a 15% rate increase, which on $39 every 2 months is about $5 extra every 2 months. The overage amount where people go over that amount, when they're watering their lawns and doing all those things, that will also go up 15%. And that's where, you know, it's kind of a conservation effort. The more they use, the more they spend. So that will go into place, and things seem to be going smoothly. Other, you know, Facebook, sometimes the news and things like that kind of tries to hit Warrenton and Gerhart, but we're working really closely together. They're good folks over there. We don't have any issues with them, and things are going pretty smoothly. So we have come up with some things. This might have to do a little bit more with planning than what I just updated you on, but I came to the conclusion that in the 2010-2020 census, we gained about 380 people in Gerhart. Compare that to the 10 years, 70 years back, probably had 12 people, 13, 10, 9, 12, 15, and then almost 300. And so that just gives you an idea of what we're feeling around town. And you know, that does impact planning, it impacts the city, it impacts what we can do. But the epiphany came in that the census did not cover the pandemic. That happened between 18 and 20 is when they finished that out. So all the people, retirees, the escapees and the whatever's, you know, they are coming in also. I don't know if you want to double that 300 people and say we've grown within 600 in the last 10 years or so, or even more, but it kind of feels like it's established. So I just wanted to make you aware of those numbers. So when you're looking around town.
How do you come up with the 300 number? How do you count those people?
22% times, well, the difference between the two census.
2010 and 2020,
Yes,
that was
Yes.
done in the summer of 2020.
correct.
So that is,
It was finished in the summer of 2020, but they weren't counting right at to the very end, or they were putting it together. So we had the beginning of the pandemic, but people moved to town to get out of those other cities. A lot of retirees are almost, you know, retired, decided to just go ahead and do it. We got a lot more families in town. We got a lot more young folks.
How many of those 300 are people who already have second homes here who are now being counted as permanent residents?
Well, that's one of the problems. That is an issue that the city is kind of suffering through, because if you think of our budget and what we have to deal with in the incoming tax revenue, many of the homes that were second homes, Gerhart was 60% unoccupied homes back in 2010 to 2020. We're now about 50 according to census, but most of the people moved into second homes. So they're already paying taxes. We did not see a tax increase, but we've got an increased amount of people. You know, so they're really looking at a difference. We had some new building, and there was some, but not enough to really make a significant difference. So does that answer your question, Terry?
Yeah, I'm just skeptical of the 300 because I know there are a lot of people who have second homes are now calling this their residence. So it really doesn't change the.
But they still have another place.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
But yeah, it didn't change. And the other thing that caused is it helped with the water crisis that we're in. The water fund is not sustainable the way that we're running it, because prices have gone up by 30% in expenses and all that. But these people used to pay $39 and not use any water, right? And so that was good for us. It was a good way for us to do this. But now they're in these houses and they're using the water and they're still paying the same rates. So those are some of the impacts that we're feeling. That's all right now.
I have a question, if I could. Is there any consideration being given to whatever the opposite of a sliding scale would be, so that rather than across the board, 15% increase, the more water you use, the more you pay for it?
We're doing a 15% increase on both of those. So there is the basic rate, you get 7,480 gallons for $39. Then for every 748 gallons after that, currently you pay $6.40. So it's quite expensive compared to your allocated water. So the more people use water, the more they pay those consumption units, and their bills are going to go up. We have some people that pay almost $1,000 during this period of time. They have big green grasses, and that's just the way they want to do it. Families, the typical August water usage, the average is 11 units of water. So that would be $39 plus $6.40 over 2 months. Really cheap. We're the cheapest water nation. No, I don't. But it definitely in the county. Add 15% to both of those, and it's not very big. I think that what's 15% on 647.20, somewhere near there. So it's a very small raise for 2 months, for that. And then the 15% on the 39 is only $5, and so that's $2.50 a month. That they're
But people say, just to kind of continue with Pauline's question, people pay the same overage fee after the 600 and whatever it was.
Mhm.
More blocks of that still cost the same per block.
Yes, there's not a
There's no
slight,
continuing escalation
not yet.
of rate.
So if someone wanted somebody to think about that, what's the proper way to get that?
That
passed on?
information out. We're working on that. We've got a lot. We're getting ready to do the campaign. We're going to do a town hall on the. I think is it Wednesday the 26th? Yes, Wednesday the 26th at 3 p.m.
July.
of this month, July. So yes, we're working on getting that out, but with those modest rates and as low as our rates were, we weren't concerned about setting up anything for people that might be in need because it's not a great amount. And we don't have a sliding scale yet, but we may go that direction. We're
It's kind of
going,
the opposite of a sliding scale.
yeah, so we're going to revisit the rates every year moving forward.
Maybe it's an escalating scale.
There you go.
Thank you, Chip.
Well, are we gonna punch more, is punching more wells in out there, is that a consideration?
We can punch some more wells in. I'm gonna give you, I think it's pretty accurate. We have 8 wells out there now. We have permits for, I think, 13. So we are able to put more wells in, but we're not pulling all the water out that we can, because some of our wells are sitting stagnant, we only use a few at a time. We have the ability to pump more water. We just don't have the water rights to do that. The water rights, remember the Warrenton situation back in 2000, even earlier than that, the 90s. The city of Warrenton raised rates on Gearhart because they were having some issues with their systems. They wanted to build a new water treatment system. City of Gearhart said, no way, we're starting our own. They got into the plan, they designed it, they came up with a $7 million price tag to build the water treatment facility and the and everything that goes along with it. City of Warrenton and some others, but mostly the city of Warrenton, threw a lot of appeals, 3 years worth of appeals onto the water rights decision. Over that 3 years, a few things happened. First of all, the arsenic rate changed. Our water sits naturally at 22 parts per billion. The rate, the maximum amount was 50 parts per billion. They brought it down to 10 during this appeal process. So we had to completely, and this is before Chad, they had to completely redesign the water treatment facility because now we have to do a state-of-the-art arsenic removal, which we can get it down to 0 now, and it is the state-of-the-art system. The other thing that happened is building codes changed. We got into the critical infrastructure stage. So suddenly we need twice as much rebar, twice as much concrete, different types of buildings and all that. So that was a cost increase. And then the third thing that happened was that a cap on the amount of water that we could put in, because the Water Resources Division was saying that because of our location and how close we are to Neocoxy Creek, that we're within 2 miles of our wells, they were concerned we were going to draw Neocoxy Creek down. it's not happening. It's hard, yeah, because the
Down
aquifer there.
4 feet at my house.
Well, that's because the summer it hasn't rained, but it's not, they can't prove with the numbers that the city of Gerhart is drawing it down, plus our aquifer is 160 feet down. It's two different sets, so we have the data now after 11 years to really go Water Resources Division and to hopefully get some more water rates so that we can get off the Warrenton situation. Things were really spicy back then between the two towns. It's not like that anymore.
All right, thank you, Chad. Did you have anything from Joe? No. Okay, are there any things from commissioners tonight? No. Okay, we have the goals list.
Oh, Garrett is online. I don't know if he's got any update.
Oh, okay.
Garrett, are you there, sir?
Hey. Hi, everybody. I'm here.
Hey, Garrett, do you have any updates?
I don't have any updates. We don't have any applications that have come in, to my knowledge, that are headed to the Planning Commission in terms of variances, conditional use permits, or zoning amendments. But you never know. So I'm ready when they come. Do you all have any questions for me?
Anyone? No? Okay, no, you're safe. Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have the goals list. Were there any corrections, additions, concerns about the goals list?
I have a couple
Yes,
questions.
on.
On the staff one at the very bottom where it says draft a statement summarizing the vision of the comprehensive plan for distribution. Did that not go out?
If it was done, probably needed to be deleted. It's still on there. Yeah, it's still on there. I know, we keep saying erase and they keep putting it back on there, don't they? It was supposed to have been taken off of
Yeah.
after Don did his most excellent work.
I got really good, I heard really good comments about that.
Great. We have the car on the refrigerator.
I did too. The other question I had is this November 2022, it was expressed to have R3 change discussion added. Does that need to be there?
That is there for future discussion.
So why don't we take it off until we're ready to discuss it?
We leave them on there until, so we just keep them in our memory. Because we have short-term memories, all of us. Or something. What change was being thought about? Okay, you're looking at,
I'm at the very bottom. It says-
oh, no, it was expressed to have R3 change discussion added to the goals list. And it was discussed back then. I think that there are a couple here that weren't here then. I could go back and tell you exactly what the discussion was. I can't do
I
that.
think it has something to do with housing.
It had something to do with housing.
We would want to consider maybe more,
So it was
maybe less.
kind of around the time when you guys approved the apartment, the additional apartments.
It was when Fall River was doing his
Yeah.
petition and changing it, so
Yeah.
they wanted it on, you guys want, it was brought to my attention to put it on,
Yeah.
to remind you to talk about it later because of the vacation.
We probably should either remove the note or actually put it as a goal on the other.
Whatever you guys want to do.
Right, okay with moving around?
Yeah, there was a part of that policy that was put in that said that yes, you can be R3, but no, you cannot have short-term vacation rentals or commercial. And so that is one of the conditions in the Paul Falvey near your house. He was allowed to become
Right.
R3 so he can build his next building.
Didn't that project like not fit any sort of definition or kind of what?
Yeah,
the
it's
zoning?
kind of-
It just was outside the scope of it. So we're talking about finding something that
Would fit better for
would
next
fit
year.
better for that.
because it wasn't approved R3 with those conditions. I understand.
Let's just see here. I can find it.
Like you need R2.
It actually came from Sharon, and Sharon said she would like to see the R3 change discussion put on commission goals. And that was as far as it went. We didn't have any hearings in December, so we didn't meet. And we didn't go any further with it, but that's what Sharon asked for it to be put on there, is the reason it was there. And on that particular meeting, Michael Morgan was, had property at 1777 Pine Ridge, and 1837 Pine Ridge Drive, and was wanting to change the density.
Right.
So that's what was going on with that.
Right.
Not too scared to move.
I think it should be on there permanently. I think you should put it on there, move it up. It's as we look at housing, and Chad has just shared with us that we have an increasing population.
Where do you want it?
Well,
Why don't we put it in two is zoning ordinance amendment considerations.
it's a good idea, Russ. Yeah. Okay. Anything else with the goals? Okay, all right, visitors' comments. We have a lively audience of 3 people today. And do any of you have anything you'd like to share with us today that's not on the agenda? No, I'm glad we can give you something to do on Thursday evening. We have no public hearings. We only have unfinished business, which has to do with the tree planting ordinance discussion and tree committee process discussion. I was not here in, I think we discussed in May. I forgot. I was not here in May, and you discussed that. As I shared with Carol earlier, no one would come to me in their right mind and ask me about trees. I know dead trees, not so dead trees, green trees. I know nothing about trees. So, in reading your minutes from that meeting, and I'm sure you all reviewed that, you know, I read that, you know, the discussion about it, city right of ways, and the commission is asked to research, and I had here that Commissioners Nesberg and Taggart have volunteered to take on this task of it. And so have you done anything?
If I may,
Yes.
let me fall on my sword, because I think there was some efforts for Russ to do something about it, but my move has been my priority, and now we're here at June 8th. And we're meeting tomorrow, and we're gonna dive in. You wanted some information about the forester?
Yeah, I can speak about that. John and I talked while he was still back east, but I talked with Brittany Oxford, who is a state urban forester. And she sent me some information and offered to get together with us at some point if it becomes necessary. But the feeling I got from her is that she's more for a bigger town, where somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to put oak trees down all the numbered streets and elms trees down all the word streets. And, you know, she may have input for us, but what she would like to see is for us to establish a basic philosophy, which I guess I feel like we don't have that yet, and I think that should be our first. I mean, do we want to do anything? I mean, we have, you know, our checkpoints. Do something, do nothing. You know, do tree speed. But I did talk to this woman. She is probably a valuable source at some point if we get, you know, out of our starting blocks.
And just again, Russ and I are meeting tomorrow to kind of get the work properly kicked off. And any input from any of the commissioners today will actually inform that, so it'll be helpful.
My issue is, you know, too many years on planning commissions, it's usually there's something like this, or we're looking at a change like this. We usually get at least an outline of something where the planning director has words. Because I don't always have those legal kind of words that need to be used to make it right. And so often they bring that to us. So we're kind of in a gray area here. That being said, you two are meeting together tomorrow. Don, what would you like to throw into the pot?
Well, I'm looking forward to you guys having your meeting, and Russ, I think developing a basic philosophy is a really a place to start. You know, I mean, as far as what I have done is talk to many of my friends and associates in Cannon Beach about the ordinance there that we're reviewing. And honestly, they feel that it's very difficult and prohibitive. And I'm not sure why this one that we have isn't satisfactory, because there's probably a lot of time to work into that. So that's my only comment right now, but I would like to hear what you two come up with for sure.
But I guess this is our existing ordinance, right? Why are we doing this? Is there a problem with the existing ordinance? Is there a problem with enforcement? Chad, has there been any problem with tree issues that you're aware of?
Can I just remind everybody kind of how this, I think, started the discussion in May, as I recall, and I think Sharon was on the phone, so she might.
Yeah, and I was gonna call him Sharon.
Yeah, because she was really kind of the initiator, I think, of this discussion. And if you look at the notes here in unfinished business, there's two distinct discussions, which is the tree planting discussion. What would happen if somebody chose to offer, as was done, to plant trees? Does the city want to take those over, et cetera, et cetera? And then the second one was the tree permitting. I'm not entirely sure how we actually moved to the tree permitting discussion, because it started really with this kind of tree planting discussion. You know, what would happen if somebody decided they wanted to plant 50 trees on Pacific Way? Would we like that? Would we not like that? Are we capable of taking it over? Chad commented during the discussion about right now our kind of inability from the staff and budget perspective to take over a bunch of planted trees. So I just want to remind everybody that there were two distinct issues that are properly listed here as distinct. And we may well say on the permitting process that it's fine.
I mean, that doesn't answer my question. Is this really necessary? I mean, I'm asking Chad, as you're the enforcement guy, and is there issues with what's going on now with the trees on people's property?
Okay.
I'm gonna, Sharon,
We're going back and forth between two issues here.
Yeah,
The
let's-
first one, let's talk about the tree planting side of it, and then we'll get rid of the tree, get to the tree cutting side. So on the tree planting side, the staff doesn't want to get in the way by saying we don't have the staff, and I apologize, I did make it sound like that. I was. It's one of those days, probably. But, you know, we want to hang back and hear what the vision is that the city wants. That's what we need most. Once we have that vision of where to plant, how to feed, how to water, you know, all those things, how to trim, and we get an idea of where that is, then the city can go back and, you know, basically cost all that out, right? Give you an idea of what it's going to take to get there. So let's take that, maybe it was a suggestion, take that approach, talk about what the city wants, and then we can talk about how we're going to do it in regards to the planting side of things.
Or potentially initiate some form of a survey to see if there's any desire for this in the community at all. Because I remember you mentioned in May that you were like, looks fine to me. And that may be the predominant position of many town residents. So we don't know just because there's some interest, doesn't mean that there's majority interest or substantial interest.
well, yeah, I mean, deciduous trees up and down the collector streets, They bloom for 2 weeks a year and it's really pretty, but, then when leaves fall off, they clog up the drains and the city staff is probably tasked with unclogging all the drains that are full of that's the part I would think at, and just this philosophy I always had at Your Heart Latte Fair, it's like, well, we got a bunch of trees, let's protect the ones we have and just be cool.
Well, I think the issue has been that there have been a number of people, and I've certainly seen it in my own neighborhood, that go out in the wee hours or whatever, and they kind of ignore it. It just isn't enforced. I know the trees taken down.
Oh,
There were trees taken down the golf course because, golfers kept hitting the tree and saying, yes, I'm not too sure.
Those jobs were permanent.
Except, what they did on property, they didn't know.
We didn't admit that.
Yes, you, not someone did.
Are we
But
talking about trees on people's private property or city trees?
Well,
Or both?
the Cannon Beach permitting process is trees on people's private property.
But that's for cutting.
For cutting, and so, like I said, there's two parts there. One's the planting and one's the cutting, I guess they're two sides of the same coin.
Well, isn't a piece of the planting anyway, the concern about people voluntarily planting property that belongs to the city, not
Right,
to them?
well, that was the offer.
Right, yes, and there was a group that wanted to do that, put in trees, and I think Sharon actually offers to water them. Because it takes some time for those trees to become established. I would know one tree, and like I said, I'm not a tree person. Would it be, Sharon, are you there?
Jenny, can I just
Yeah, I'm
clarify
here.
one thing?
I'm here.
Okay, hold on just a second, Sharon.
In regards to the golf course was legally allowed to do that. And what the golf course did is return the terrain of the golf course to its original
No,
format.
the trees behind neighbor's house, we had the trees on the.
I'm not talking about that.
Oh, that's where I'm talking about the
Okay,
trees.
but on the golf course itself,
You're thinking which golf course you're talking about.
Gerhard Golf Course.
I'm not talking about that one.
Okay, well,
I'm-
anyway, I would just.
No, I have
I
no.
wouldn't want the golf course to be besmirched in any way
No,
about removing the trees.
no, it wasn't Highlands that removed it, it was actually people that went over the fence and decided to cut down the trees on property that was in foreclosure and owned by the county, in essence.
Okay, so that's two different things then.
Yes, you're
Okay.
talking about a totally different thing, and it happened. Sharon, this was your, I know that this was something that was, or was and is something that's important to you. Is there anything that you would like to add to this discussion to clarify it for us?
We're talking about scientists.
Yes,
planting.
yes, thank you, Virginia. Yes, I would just really quickly, I'd like to answer Terry's question. So there's two different things. One is a proposal that I brought before the city about planting trees along a couple of the streets, Fifth Avenue and Gerhart Loop. That's the tree planting proposal. That proposal was that trees be planted along there because there are no trees in those areas. I also went to a couple of my neighbors on Fifth and said the city's thinking about doing this. You know, how do you feel about this? And they were very enthusiastic about it. So that's the tree planting proposal. In that proposal, I was willing to pay for the trees, and Jeff Miller was willing to have his guys plant the trees. So the key question on that was, and still is, who's gonna, how are we gonna maintain them and how are they gonna be watered? Because they have to be really watered on a regular basis for the first 2 years to get them established. So I brought this to Dana and Rita, this is before I was on city council, was still on the planning commission. And Dana insisted that that be taken to you guys and that there be a public hearing on it. That was Dana, okay? So that's why you guys are even thinking about this. That would not have been what I would have done. It's fine with me, but my proposal to buy these trees and have them planted, I didn't think it was going to be as big a deal as it has been. So that's why that's in front of you. The second issue that's in front of you guys is the tree ordinance. Ordinance that the city has, you have copies of that. You've got copies of the Cannon Beach ordinance. The reason I am bringing that up is because in the past 7 years, I've seen over 200 trees removed from around the city. Not all on private property. Some of them were actually ended up being in the riparian zone, but most of them on private property. So my concern is that we're losing trees at, a pretty good rate. So I would like to see our ordinance tightened up a little bit. It's a pretty, if you can cut 5 trees per year on your property, in 3 years, you've cut down 15 trees. So that's why that's in front of you. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Sharon.
One question, I thought Pacific Way was part of that tree planting project as well.
Well, it was originally, and then Jeff Miller said that he was going to plant Pacific Way. The other piece of information that I found out is I spoke at length with the gal in Seaside who takes care of all their public plantings. And she said that they are ripping out their cherry trees, which is what I proposed and what Jeff Miller wanted to plant. They're ripping them out because they have the potential to tear up sidewalks and blah, blah, blah. And they're putting in instead ginkgo trees, which are very lovely trees and turn a bright yellow in the fall. So that was her input.
So where do we go from here?
Well, let's talk about, let's give the two gentlemen here maybe some idea about philosophy if we want to change. Do we want to tighten it up? Is it too relaxed or is it satisfactory? That seems to be the easier part of the whole thing. In my head, it does. I read through Cannon Beaches and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's the most confusing thing I've ever read. And Cannon Beach, it's just confusing to me, but the whole thing. Ours is a little clearer, it's so big, so many a year. But again, I know what Sharon's referring to. There have been some places where a lot of trees have been taken down.
Well, if we're gonna go through this, I like tidy it up. We could tidy it up both ways. We could say some of the stuff is too strict and we want to take it out. So tidy goes, tidy.
Well, Chad, we don't have a permit. Do we?
Okay, we're talking about tree cutting, by the way.
A cutting permit.
So we're on the second item right now.
Yeah, so would you like me to take you through a few of the important parts of our current ordinance? I won't take much time. Page 6-15, first one that's on there. I'll just go through it. You don't have to really. The first part, this has to do with landscaping, vegetation, revegetation, tree preservation. It has to do with subdivisions, landscaping plans, requirements on Highway 101. Those are the requirements, but the first one that really hits the tree situation is number 5. And it doesn't give you any context, but it's the first prohibited action is riparian vegetation. We have a riparian zone, use Neocoxy Creek as an example, from the mean high tide, which is at the edge of the creek, basically, a little bit up, 50 feet out away from the creek. It's called the riparian zone. So In that zone, riparian vegetation adjacent to streams, lakes, and Gearhart shall be protected in accordance with the following. The following area of riparian vegetation is defined as 50 feet on either side of Ecoxy Creek, 50 feet on either side of Mill Creek, 25 feet adjacent to the unnamed lake northeast of Pacific Way. Setback shall be measured from the mean high water line on estuarine portions and the ordinary high water line for non-estuarine portions of these streams. Okay, so in vegetation, let's see, all structures should be out of this area. Number C, for areas described in A all above, where direct water access and all that, vegetation shall be retained within the riparian areas listed with the following exceptions. Removal of dead, diseased, or dying trees, or trees that pose a safety hazard. 2, removal of vegetation necessary to provide for use listed in B above. 3, vegetation removal in conjunction with an approved in-water project. 4, removal of noxious weeds is defined by the cities. And 5, vegetation removal necessary to maintain proper stream drainage. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. Riparian area has some restrictions in there. But let's go to the next part first. This is number 8 on page 6-17. It looks like page 3 in this packet. Preservation and removal of trees. So the purpose was written pretty well and taken from the comp plan portions of it. The purpose is to recognize trees are significant aesthetic, environmental resources. We should create conditions favorable to the preservation of this plant heritage for the benefit of the current and future residents of the city. The purpose is not to prohibit the removal of trees, but to ensure that mature trees are removed only where necessary and to permit the reasonable development and use of property. There's definitions of what tree is. This is another important one. For the purpose, and this is our current ordinance, for the purpose of the section, a tree is defined as follows: any tree greater than 12 inches in diameter through the middle, as measured at 4 1/2 feet above existing grade. So you're not measuring the trunk because the trunk goes like this. You're not measuring up high. Trees go like that. You're measuring at 4 1/2 feet. If it is not 12 inches in diameter, it is not a tree. So you can cut down
More about trees.
anything that's 12 inches and less. You can cut down as many of those as you like on your property. This has nothing to do with dune vegetation. We're not going there today, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay, applicability. Okay, all the zones. That's correct. Requirements. So the first requirement is any proposing to remove, cut down, or otherwise destroy more than 5 trees within a 12-month period. That's the key here. So you can cut down as many as you want, as 11 inches in minor, or under 12 inches and down. If it's 12 inches and above, this says otherwise destroy more than 5 trees in a 12-month period. That means you as property owners could take trees that are greater than 12 inches all the way up to the big spruce. You can take 5 of those off of your property per year, not in the riparian zone. That's different. But all of the places in Gearhart, you can remove on your property up to 5 trees. That is one of the concerns I believe that the sheriff has. All right, so people are just able to do it now, and that's without a permit.
Yeah, and how do you enforce that when you have no permit?
Well, generally, there's a couple different ways we can do that. If chainsaws are heard, which isn't very often because we don't have people here on the weekends, but we do have residents that are unpaid code enforcement officers. They go out and they say that people are cutting trees. Most of the time I go down and yeah, I'm cutting these 2 trees down and it's within the 5 and it's not a problem most of the time. Otherwise, they're just able to do it up to 5. And we really don't have a way to tell whether or not they're above or below. But if it was 5 stumps and less, it really doesn't matter. If it's more than 5 stumps, we're getting to 6 or 7, they've got some explaining to do. So that's how we've been handling it. There is no permit.
So is it, in your memory, has it ever happened?
Oh, yeah.
So the removal of more than 5 in a year has happened and without a permit, and what's happened to those individuals?
Not a lot. I mean, again, without a body, it's hard to tell sometimes. We don't get into that situation very often, but it does happen when people start cutting down more than 5 trees that are larger. And sometimes that damage is done before we even can get there and know about it. You know,
And it's really hard to tell, how big a tree is at 4.5 feet, when all you have left is the stump.
unless the stump is less than 12 inches and less. If the stump is 12 inches and less, we know 4.5 feet is going to be smaller than 12 inches.
Is that in here?
No, but that's how we measure it. Again, it's got to be 12 inches or less. And if the stump is small, it's great. But stumps aren't easy because the stumps go like this. You can have 6 inches up here and 20 inches down here. 6 inches is allowable cut. Stumps cut looks huge. I have documented those kind of trees within the last few years where people want to cut those kind of trees. And so we document it. We get some complaints. We're able to show, no, it was a small tree. Here's what it is. Well, the stump is huge. No, it's a small tree.
But how would you do that if you didn't have a?
That what I'd like to have for John and myself is, do we feel like we need a permit? I mean, that would be where I would start with this thing. And I don't intend this, my vision is it's not restrictive. It's just that you go to City Hall and say, I need a permit, I'm cutting an 11-inch tree. I think we should have permits for all that. Then it's not, the neighbor calls in, there's a chainsaw noise and you run over there. To me, it seems so vague if we don't have permits.
So Russ, what you would like to see, paraphrasing what you're saying, is a permit for anyone cutting down a tree.
And we redefine the tree, and I think 12 is too large. I think we pick a number, we say 8 inch.
Okay,
8
Cannon
inches.
Beach
or-
is 6 inches.
Yeah,
And to me-
I don't like Cannon Beach.
Well, no, but
Or their process.
I don't like the process, but I think we all kind of rolled our eyes when we realized a tree. I mean, I can look out here, I would think some of those are trees out there, but they're not 12 inches across.
Right.
And I think that we might think a definition of a smaller diameter might be.
But my
appropriate.
point is that if you get a permit, you get a permit and Chad says, yeah, there's a 14-inch tree, cut it.
Right.
It's all, to me, I see the permit as an informational document for the
Right.
city,
Right.
not as a restrictive document for the homeowner.
But if there's no restriction attached, then what's the purpose of the permit? There's gotta be some level where Chad would say, no.
Well,
I
but
think that's
Andrew
what-
spoke to that. Go
So
ahead.
when it comes to construction for the planning and building department, it's really hard to keep track of how many trees people have cut if there's no permit. So if they can cut up to 5 trees, say they go out and they cut 5 trees and then they come in and they decide they're gonna build on the land and they bring all the paperwork in, they know where the trees are and there's already been trees cut, we have no way of accounting for that. Same with the house that's already existing. If they're cutting trees and somebody calls and complains, then we have no way of keeping track of how many trees were cut prior. So as far as we know, they're allowed to cut it. I do get a lot of calls when somebody starts cutting trees, people are concerned about it, especially if there's construction going on, because they're allowed to remove all trees from the building imprint.
That's
and
important.
the septic and the drain field. To build their house on their property, if they go beyond that, outside of that, they're allowed up to the 5 trees, and then people start panicking, and I get a lot of phone calls and disruption for that as well.
But you probably get a lot of phone calls even in the footprint, because people don't know. If
Yeah,
you're a neighbor,
Right.
this is the footprint,
Right.
here's chainsaws.
So
right.
you said within the footprint, they're allowed to cut the trees.
You can build
Separate from the five.
houses.
Right. Can we go back for a second to Russ's first point that he made at the very beginning, which was basic philosophy? I sense in the room that there's a couple of different basic philosophies. There's a whole laissez-faire. You know, that's I'm new to the town. I've been there less than 4 years, and only full-time in Oregon for a month. So far be it for me to say that the town shouldn't have that perspective. But if the commission has a preponderance of perspective that laissez-faire is better, then this permit probably should be left alone. Process, because it's a pretty laissez-faire permitting process. If the preponderance of opinion of the commission and or the community at large is more to Sharon's perspective, which is we should be doing a better job protecting our tree stock, then we have a job ahead of us. But I don't get a sense that we have I don't know what the perspective is yet.
Well, I think you get a lot of pushback from the public if you start going through the permitting process. That's my opinion. So why don't you guys put together a proposal or whatever, something that we can really discuss and talk about?
To do that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, as a native Oregonian, trees are important. And we all know that trees are important to our world, our climate, and everything else. So you hate to see where someone goes in and just takes down trees. Many times we've had zoning things and planning things that have come up in this commission over the years, where, you know, the developer wanted to go in and just, I need to bring my equipment in, I need to chop down all the trees, and we're going, well, you can leave that tree, or you can leave that tree, and you can leave that tree. So it's always been a bit of our philosophy, say, let's save as many as we can. You don't need to, you know, go through and smooth everything down, because replanting them, they're never going, you know, they won't get big, they won't get 12 inches in our lifetime, I guess, but if you two want to get together and we can come back, we have no applications for anything in on the
For next month?
for next month. So
We can present.
do you want to bring back the presentation next month?
Absolutely.
I'll just give you my notes, that I just went over this afternoon.
Great.
These are just some points that I thought might be considered,
Great.
and we've talked about most of them, and the comp plan statement.
Yeah.
Besides conserve, it's conserve, preserve, and protect.
This was kind of more towards philosophy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's goal.
Okay, Ross, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question, Chad, would a permit process like this have a fee with it?
You would have to, because of the staff time, the energy it takes, yes.
Do you have a guess on what that fee would be?
I don't think it would be. Great. I mean, there's times where this kind of thing could take 2 hours of our time. And if we did that plus expenses, I mean, that could bring it up $100, $150, you know, just to go ahead and take care of some of the expenses, taxes, can take care of the rest, but. You know, from that standpoint, I would rather get the vision and then understand how it is that we can accomplish it, and then we can make adjustments to that vision. But it is a going concern. We have not had any tree permits requests. I'm not sure that we had very many cut downs. We haven't had
I've had
two complaints.
two permit requests. Oh, no, I've had one more. I can't even,
So how about this month? How many complaints do you have? I've been out of town, so I don't.
maybe like 9, but there really hasn't been any.
That's significant. So now we're taking care of things. It's probably costing us a little bit more by not having the permit process, because we're kind of chasing our tails a little bit. I do understand the permit process. I also understand, you know, where the people are coming from when they want to build their houses and things. And I think that, you know, somewhere in between.
But it seems to me logically, when they ask for a permit to build a house, that you know where the trees are going to be taken down.
That is a permit, and that is
So
happening.
it's permitted when they come in to develop a lot.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so we do have some permitting process already there.
And we have a permitting process on the beach dune vegetation that includes trees as well. That's quite comprehensive.
Okay, so we don't have to invent the whole wheel.
No,
Just.
But if you owned property and you hadn't developed it yet, you could cut 5 trees every year until you decided to build. And you could have no trees left on the top.
Or even if you had developed it and you had.
Yeah, your house is already there and you decide you can cut down 5 trees.
It's giving us too much shade, I want to cut down this, this tree.
So I think you two, do you have a direction that you
Yeah.
can work on?
Can I have just one more thing with the commission? I don't, it shouldn't be a big discussion, but I would think. I did examine some other small towns and cities, ordinances, not just Cannon Beach, but others, from Connecticut that I found, just looking online. And one thing that a lot of them, not a lot, so my extensive analysis, one thing that I saw once or twice was this legacy tree concept. Which is there, you know, the town surveys tree stock and says there are 14 trees in town that are important, you know, they're 42 inches in diameter, they're 200 years old, whatever, even on private property. And they have a specific intent in those policies around limiting what you could do. You could still do certain things, but. So I just wanted to get a perspective. Terry, it's quite clear to me that your perspective
If
is
I have a
not.
200-year tree by my house and the storm comes and it blows over, I gotta come to you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just-
Yeah, yes,
may I just mention a couple of things here?
yeah,
It's interesting that there's a statement in place, which has been for years, that the planning commission may grant or deny a request for tree removal based on criteria, correct?
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And that is when people want to cut down more than 5 trees, that is not in the building, and that's what the golf course went through once they actually came through the planning commission and explained that these trees are aged out, and you've seen the ones that are on Cottage, the ones that are falling over in the storms, they kind of outlived their life. They had some of those inside, they were able to get rid of some trees that were healthy because they wanted to get the course kind of back, but that was permitted. And then they've also taken a lot of that dangerous trees down. So the permitting process has to also come up with a way that they can prove that a tree is dangerous or dead. And one of Sharon's concerns, something to think about in the past, was that you've got the arborist wanting to cut down a tree and he says it's dead. So is it a third party person? Is it not? Whereas somebody wants to cut down a tree, they have to get, so it gets a little complicated, but those are some of the things that we've had to deal with. A lot of the trees that come down, and even some that have been in the riparian area, not all of this is true, were dangerous. But not all of them. Some of them were cut down before we were able to get there. Weekend work or night or just going to town, they fall in the tree. So a permitting process, as long as we keep it simple, we'd be happy to work with the two of you. When you have questions, or we can meet there as well. And then push this forward for next month.
Just one more question, sorry.
yes.
Should there be some approval of the cherry trees being planted in the Pacific Way right away and other rights of way?
What the city wanted, we kind of got, so Jeff Miller is kind of an eccentric guy. He builds beautiful houses, and all that, and he loves these cherry trees. Jeff Miller was integral in designing the landscaping that's around the water treatment facility. And then he put some cherry trees up there. And then he started planting some cherry trees on city property where we could say, okay, yeah, we can do some of those. It kind of came out as all, but volunteers, once we planted these, volunteers were waterable. That didn't quite work because I say, if we don't have a plan and we don't have anything in place, the city just does not know if we can even take care of it. So Sharon's idea is good. If we want to plant more trees, that sounds good. City needs a plan. Once we have a plan, we can discuss all the things that are involved in it, watering, caring for, placing, routes, not putting streets or sidewalks at risk. Then we can say, I have a donor that wants to plant 30 trees in this area. Well, we have a plan for that. This is one of those areas where we want more trees, and this is how we should do it. Without that, the city doesn't want to get into a volunteer situation where people are helping out, because those situations start off great. If they don't make it a long time, and then the city has to adopt it and try to figure out how to work the situation. That's what
And
we're trying to
work
do.
around it. There's no plan. It's piecemeal.
Yeah. And we don't even know we can support it. There's places where there's no water available. So we'd have to consider all those things, come up with a plan, then plant trees.
All right, concerns of the commission? Any concerns? It is 7:57, meeting is adjourned.
Hey Terry, I ran some numbers.
I mean, it's 6:57.
So from 2010 to 2020, we gained 493 residents. That's in here. But that's from 2010 to 2020. From 2015 to now, the 5 years in that, it was 443. So it's been the last 5 years of the census where we really saw the growth.
Where
And
does 2015 numbers come from? It wasn't the census. Where did it-
no, but they do divide out, when did you move, when have you been in there, they ask all those questions, they're able to get some of that information out. So that's where we're at so far.
Since you got the-
Okay, thank you.
Oh, oh.